Today's episode of Inside Gaming Daily is brought to you by MeUndies. For 15% off your first pair, go to MeUndies.com/InsideGaming.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside Gaming Daily for Wednesday.
Wednesday, it's hump day, 'cause we're halfway through the work week, so why is every Wednesday story really bad? Why do I have to hump to the worst news?
Has Chucklefish been stiffing people who work for them?
Yes.
Specifically when it came to one of its breakout games, Starbound.
Absolutely, yes. We're not clickbaiting you here. There it is, yes. We did real journalism again. We deserve a parade every time. Yeah, thank you. So that's what some have recently alleged on social media, claiming that the indie developers' labor practices are a lot less cute and cuddly than its little pixelated games.
In addition to the gallons of tea spilled on social media, we also reached out to those that personally worked on Starbound to get to the bottom of what's been going on over at Chucklefish.
Again, real journalism right here. Again, parade. And we learned some very interesting details about how people were paid for their work on Starbound, or in many cases just weren't paid at all.
Let's dive right into it. Tell us more, Alana.
So it's a story about a lot of eager young people who are really excited to get their foot in the gaming industry and to work with a developer who had already made a big hit, which I did. Lawrence, I think you might have done something similar to get into the industry. I work for free a lot.
Yeah, no, I years and years of writing for websites for free back in the day, and then teaching myself editing on my own time. To get into a field with a lot of competition, you typically have to put in all the time up front. No one's going to pay you to do it if you're not good at it yet. And no one's going to teach you how to do it because they're too busy grinding their asses off.
I did several years of free work, but always for publications that wouldn't have been able to pay me because they weren't making much money, so I never felt exploited, which is where this case gets a little different. So if you're not familiar with the UK-based Chucklefish, you have probably heard of its best-known game, Stardew Valley.
Have heard of that, yes.
They making money, but they actually didn't make Stardew Valley. That was Eric Barone, but Chucklefish published it.
More recently, Chucklefish put out the tactical game Wargroove, and they're currently working on a new Magic and Wizards IP called Witchbrook. Video games,
Yeah, but one person who worked on an earlier Chucklefish game, Starbound, claims they put hundreds of hours into the game and never saw a dime.
Yeah, and then a lot of people chimed in saying they had similar experiences with a lack of pay and bad treatment at the hands of Chucklefish founder Finn Bryce.
Finn. So this whole controversy started with designer Damon Reece, who tweeted last week that they worked on Starbound for almost 2 years, starting at age 16.
Despite that work, Reece said they weren't paid, quote, a single cent for it, while the company made unbelievable amounts of money off my labor.
That was English.
Because it's British.
They also said that about a dozen others were also not paid.
So then this accounting was validated by a bunch of other people, right, Alana?
Yeah, so Reese's account was basically confirmed by another person who worked on the game, Rho Watson, among others. Watson backed up Reese's account saying, I was there, this is all true. Then some more people added in their own experiences. The composer Clark Powell said they almost did audio and music for Starbound until they were told it was going to be unpaid. Powell added that Bryce told them that none of the artists or coders were getting paid, which is crazy.
Oh, that makes it fine.
Well, it's kind of illegal.
As long as it's not just me.
Paid, so you don't deserve money.
As long as everybody's slave labor, then what's the problem?
I could give you money, but there's also exposure.
According to Powell, when they said that didn't seem right, you know, the whole work for free thing, Bryce exploded into a foul-mouthed screed.
That's a quote.
I actually love that.
I know, right?
What a foul-mouthed screed he had.
So Powell talked to some workers on the game who said that, quote, they had all been given promises of future pay, continuing working, because all the time and love they had already poured into Starbound.
So we did some of our own reporting on this too, again, parade, whatever, and got in touch with a lot of these folks to let them expand on their comments. So here's what we learned.
So basically we interviewed Rho Watson, who was a manager on Starbound, and they gave us a really interesting fact about the game, that apparently the entire project was a revenue share, at least for some people. Meaning that basically nobody was paid while working on the game, and just a select few were paid after it was shipped. At least that was the intention. It didn't quite go that way, but we'll go through all the details soon.
Watson was one of those people who had a revenue sharing agreement, and while Watson was eventually paid, they ended up working unpaid for almost 2 years while the game was in development.
Watson told us that it created a really toxic atmosphere because the more that was added to the game and the further the release got pushed back, the longer we worked without pay. Meanwhile, there were unpaid contributors who were basically told, I can't pay you because I'm already paying these people. It's their fault.
Nice.
So yes, not only are you compelling people to work for free, but also kind of cultivating infighting between two different classes of people, both of which are not getting paid.
Bit of resentment in there.
Just a tap. So yeah, that led to a lot of resentment between people who weren't paid and people who were.
Yeah.
But as Watson told us, the fact that some people were being paid was used against them.
As in, you're getting paid eventually, so you should be more grateful. You could be like them, people who aren't even getting paid at the end of this. So yeah, Watson also said that the overall attitude from Bryce was, if you won't do what I want, there's 12 other people waiting to do your job for free, which
I have heard that before.
I think we all have.
That is always how it goes.
That's what the old football
industry.
coach said.
And it's unfortunately true. It is the competition that creates the need to work for free, or need is a strong word, but yeah. Watson said that Bryce would frequently go on tirades, specifically saying there are people lining up at the door to work with me.
Watson also said they felt that there was an implication to share their percentage of future earnings with other contributors.
Yeah, so specifically about that, I think Watson Watson tried to raise the issue that none of their contributors were getting paid either, and they were just told, just pay them out of your share if you feel so bad about it.
But
the share that didn't exist yet, by the way.
At one point, Watson said that the team basically had to stage a revolt because they were all running out of money and development of Starbound had wildly gotten off track with no end in sight.
Watson added, we collectively asked Bryce to accept a deal we'd been offered, and he flew off the handle. The deal referenced in that case was a pre-order bundle through Humble Bundle. Whew.
It's a fun one to say.
Yeah.
Well, that resulted in some people getting paid, but Watson said that actually added to the dysfunction because, as they put it, now it was like, you've been paid now, so don't ever complain about anything.
Oh, now you want to get
Which they did.
Now you want to be credited.
Yeah.
Now you don't want to work 18 hours a day.
What's next? Health insurance?
Yeah, I don't care if it's broken.
So Watson now actually heads up their own indie studio called Igloosoft Games. They're working on a 2D sandbox game called Outworlder, which we agreed to mention in exchange for sharing their experiences with us. So there you go. Check it out if you like. We're linking it in the description as well.
Yeah, hopefully there's a good narrative there of, I wonder when all these bad practices, now I'm going to go do my own studio and not do those things.
Watson said they'll use their new studio to right some of Chucklefish's wrongs and run the studio in a way that's more fair and equitable.
Yeah, as for Chucklefish's management, Bryce was singled out by a lot of people who worked on Starbound for treating workers poorly and compelling the inexperienced to work for free. So yeah, the people we interviewed all told us that they were excited to work with Bryce because he'd been a part of the dev team that made the indie hit Terraria. If you want to really launch your career, it makes sense. So
Yeah, that made him a pretty big deal in the indie gaming world, and some said that he used that card to get lots of people to work for free.
Bryce actually has put out a statement on this, right, Alana?
Yeah, so he told Polygon, these allegations come from a number of years ago and do not reflect who I am now. I would like to apologize if my words or actions have ever caused any hurt or distress, as that was not my intention. I pride myself on running an inclusive and progressive company and continue my commitment to having equality and fairness as a cornerstone of Chucklefish. Weird though, because he's talking about equality and fairness and using all these SJW buzzwords, but at no point is he like, I now pay people.
I mean, fairness would imply that he pays people when they work for him.
That is true.
That might genuinely be the case now for all we know, but it certainly doesn't sound like it was the case back in 2013, which is the story that's now coming to light. So how did all this happen? We got even more details from Damon Reece. Recall they were the one that kicked all this off by venting about the experience on Twitter in the first place. Reece said they were responsible for all the narrative content in the early versions of the game, as well as working on the game's lore and marketing content for the blog and newsletter. They also helped put together the game's crowdfunding effort in 2013. And that's not just fluff either. Reece actually shared some very concrete things that they worked on, including a 60-page lore bible. 60 pages created for this game, all without compensation. So this is real work getting done. This isn't like forum moderators or people helping out with social media. This
Game
is
development.
Yeah, it's real assets being generated that are real used in the production of a real game that is sold for money.
So Reece went on to say that the position was pitched as a volunteer one, but with an important caveat. They said that it was heavily implied that if we worked with the team for long enough, we'd get jobs once the money was happening.
Reece also said that they were required to sign our rights away to work on the game at all, and were told my contract was industry standard. Reece said I was a naive newcomer to the industry and my trust was utterly betrayed. They eventually left Chucklefish and are currently the lead writer on an indie game called Necro Barista.
You could be making that name up and I would believe you.
Necro Barista?
That's real.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, I remember that one.
interested in that game.
I actually remember that one.
I think it's been part being worked on in Australia. Shout out to Australia.
Shout out to that piece of Pangea that went over there.
Sort of an underdog continent, right?
Yeah.
So we asked Chucklefish about the whole labor controversy, and they sent us a statement saying, we're aware and saddened by the current allegations against Chucklefish regarding Starbound's early development.
They added that during this time, both the core crew and the community contributors were collaborating via chat room and dedicated their time for free. Community contributors were under no obligation to create content, work to deadlines, or put in any particular number of hours. Everyone was credited or remunerated as per their agreement. Reece, though, disagreed with the characterization that there wasn't any obligation to create content. They told us that deadlines were absolutely in place, if not formal, then heavily implied.
Those are two different things that two different people said.
I guess people were probably really pressured, or they felt pressure, but they're like, well, we didn't write it down. So
I think that's the big thing, yeah.
Not to mention that another erstwhile member of the team, Samanthuel,
Yeah, Samanthuel
that's a cool name.
That's a
Gillson
cool name.
did end up creating assets that went into the final version of Starbound, but claimed to receive no credit for that work.
My name is Samanthuel Gillson. I did a fair bit while I was there the second time. I did like a lot of the hairstyles and the character customization menu, and I was never credited for that. I don't quite know why.
Kind of on both counts, that statement doesn't hold up. People were compelled to complete work on a deadline, even if it wasn't explicit. Damon did say specifically they were given explicit work tasks to complete. And then also there were people who made assets that went into the game that weren't credited in the final release. So not only were they basically tasked with a full-time job of work, but also sometimes weren't even given the exposure they were promised. So
Not crediting them is so brutal. Like all the stuff that I did for free when I was trying to start writing for print in Australia, if I weren't credited, like as an author, would have been a complete waste waste of my time that never would have furthered my career. And to think they were all doing that for one studio, seemingly under full-time-ish hours, is so brutal.
Yeah, but you learned an important lesson. Don't do work for free. Going back to the work culture at Chucklefish, Reece said they might hear something like, quote, if you don't get this done by X time, your work won't be in the game, and that'd be a shame, wouldn't it?
Reece then added that Finn Bryce is highly adept at using shame to manipulate people, and said that their time working on Starbound was exploitative and damaging to my mental health. It definitely sounds like it. Yeah, Reece also told us that it's massively unethical to allow workers to contribute huge amounts of content for no pay when you, the ostensible leader of the team, are walking away with millions of dollars in personal revenue share.
That's the biggest issue I have with this, is that one person is profiting and no one else is, and they're just riding the indie coattails from having worked on Terraria, which is great, but screwing over a lot of people.
I guess going back to Reece, asking the question, why did they work so hard on Starbound? They said that most of us hadn't worked on games before, and were super excited to work with someone who had just come off making Terraria.
Exactly.
Makes total sense. You want to work with potentially one of your idols. I want to work with Notch on his next big game. What's that going to be? Notch?
Yeah, what you doing, bud? Reece also said that Bryce actively cultivated an environment where people were competing with each other and vying for his favor. That sounds like that to me too, especially whenever somebody brings up an issue, you're like, well, they're not complaining about it. So we also talked, as we said before, to Samanthuel Gillson, an artist who contributed to Starbound. Gillson said their involvement started in 2011 when they saw on Twitter that Finn Bryce was making a new game and was looking for portfolios.
Tell us more about that journalism, Alana.
Gilson sent their portfolio in and was invited to chat on RIC, where Bryce asked if they wanted to be paid. Gilson, who was 18 at the time, said preferably yes.
I was 18 at the time. Yeah, he asked if I wanted to be paid or not, and I said, preferably yeah.
But ultimately, the agreement seemed to be that Gilson would work as a volunteer with vague promises of being paid at a later date. Bryce told Gilson about what the financial compensation could be and mentioned making a lot of money from his 5% stake in Terraria.
Basically, he's telling me about what the financial compensation could be. He told me about how he took a 5% revenue share on Terraria's sales. He said something along the lines of like, hey, if you do enough work to get paid for it, imagine how much you'll get paid.
I am so rich. I mean, you might be someday. Not today, because I'm not paying you.
Gilson's impression was that there were a limited number of paid positions and that the rest were just volunteers.
Bryce also sold Gilson on the idea of exposure.
He literally did the whole like, you'll get exposure thing.
There's that word.
Love it.
Yeah, and since Gilson wanted the experience, they came on board.
Gilson said it was a case of, quote, wanting to get my name out there, and the fact that Bryce was on the team that made Terraria was a big plus for them.
Gilson said they never felt like there was a specific deadline for their work, but definitely got the impression that there was social pressure to work faster. Again, there's that again.
Yeah.
And they could be replaced by somebody else who'd work for free. So at the end of it all, and this is the tough part because it happened so long ago, what did we learn here? What's the takeaway from this story? It sounds like a group of people who all worked really hard on a game, in some case hundreds of hours. That's the kind of dedication you see in mods and fan projects, but in this case it was a for-profit game.
Yeah, in Starbound's case, it sold more than 2.5 million copies less than a year after its 1.0 debut.
Rho did say that for the people who had a revenue share agreement, they were eventually paid out. The agreements were honored. The people who were not going to get paid never got paid, and the people who had revenue share eventually got their payout. But still, what a horrible arrangement to enter a project in. Sounds like a lot of the people who worked on it didn't see a dime of that money. That's where you see a lot of this resentment start to come in, of people who were burned.
In their response to us, Chucklefish also seemed to indicate that they've changed their ways as a studio.
They didn't come out directly and say that, but in their statement they said, it's been almost a decade since Starbound's development first began, and from then Chucklefish has grown considerably into an indie studio that has a strong emphasis on good working practices, providing a welcoming environment for all employees and freelancers, end quote. It seems like people probably be getting paid now.
There is some tacit implication that there were mistakes made, even though it doesn't seem like they're explicitly saying that, probably because they don't want to admit any kind of actual financial liability here, legally speaking.
They did finish by saying, though, our doors remain open to any related parties who wish to discuss their concerns with us directly.
But I think a big question a lot of people might have is, why didn't all these people just leave if they felt like they were being exploited, you know?
We asked Watson that question and they mentioned the sunk cost fallacy, which in this case means that they'd already had too much invested in the game and didn't want to just leave all that behind. Makes total sense.
Yeah, especially when your payout comes at the end of dev, so.
And you want your name in the credits, and sometimes they cut people from the credits if they aren't there when a game's done, and I get that. They'd be like, I wasted a whole year.
Yeah, as Watson put it, the goalposts kept moving and we were constantly under emotional pressure and manipulation and promises of success. It's a powerful thing. So yeah, stories like this are tough since they break so long after the events have occurred. I think naturally people want some sort of catharsis or vindication at the end. It's entirely possible that Chucklefish is in a better place now. It's just a shame they had to absorb a bunch of free labor to get there.
Maybe some retroactive compensation or at least accreditation would help make good on some past mistakes, perhaps, maybe, but I don't know. Tell us what you think. This is a YouTube video, right?
Yeah, please leave a comment below, like, comment, and subscribe. You hit the bell.
Hit that thumbs up.
We're not paying you for those comments though.
No, we can't.
You gotta write those for free.
We can give you exposure, which I believe most landlords do take
think. All of your friends are commenting, so you probably should.
Hey, we got YouTube commenters lined up out the door, and they can't wait to come on in here. So yeah,
I'll subscribe.
Not saying we don't need you, but please don't leave.
We do, actually. Please
yeah, we desperately need you. Please
suck your dick.
Today's episode of Inside Gaming Daily is brought to you by MeUndies, because when you're working your 48-hour shift on that indie game, you're gonna need some underwear that don't let you down, because it's gonna get messy down there. Who's got time to take a shower? Nobody. Who's got money to buy replacement underwears? Nobody. So you gotta invest in your undergarments to make sure they stick with you through the thick and the thin times, because both are gonna be hitting those undies before long. Like we said, you can get 50% off your first pair, free shipping, and 100% satisfaction guarantee by going to MeUndies.com/InsideGaming. Allow me to share with you a personal anecdote about my experience with Me underwears. I got my first pair, I want to say 2 years ago, and I still wear them, and they're still in the best shape of all the underwear in my drawer. That's right, I'm burning through everything at an alarming rate, but those are the Dorian Grays of underwear. They get younger as everything else gets older. You're gonna enjoy your investment in your underwears. And you don't have to invest as much because of the offer code we had, like I said. You go to MeUndies.com/InsideGaming. Again, that's 15% off your first pair, 100% satisfaction guarantee, and free shipping. When's the last time you had underwear show up at your door? And excellent underwear nonetheless. So again, that's MeUndies.com/InsideGaming for 15% off your first pair. Thank you, MeUndies, for the sponsorship, and thank you for treating your genitals right.
Female employees by attractiveness, totally different from hot girl summer. These are two different things.
I was actually really curious about this one. How do you feel about the hot girl list, Brian?
Hold on, I'm deleting a list off my phone now.
So it definitely sounds like they had some issues over there, though, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't all crotch grabbing and hot girl lists. The class action suit also claimed that Riot retaliated